An unexpected 7-foot, 250-pound center just got on the free agent market. The question is, should the Chicago Bulls be looking to take advantage of Deandre Ayton being bought out by the Portland Trail Blazers? We're going to talk about it all and more right after this. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go and get into this content for today, y'all. And Deandre Ayton was just bought out by the Portland Trail Blazers, making him an unrestricted free agent, an unexpected unrestricted free agent in the market in 2025. Now, I know that Deandre Ayton has his naysayers and he has his absolute critiques as a basketball player. There have been some questions about his motor, some questions about his desire to play basketball and to be great at the game of basketball. And I want to be clear. I want to acknowledge that. And in no way am I saying that Deandre Ayton should be locked in by the Chicago Bulls for a long-term deal or anything like that. But the question I'm going to present here is that should Deandre Ayton be a one-year stopgap or a one-year flyer deal for the Chicago Bulls? Again, you're adding a center that's legit over 7 foot. When you look at what he's able to do the last couple of years, over a block per game as well, this is a guy that brings the same rebound per minute production that Nikola Vucevic does, for example, while also being a player that can thrive more in the up-tempo system. Now, there is some questions about his desire to be great. You can't take that away from him. He likes to operate in the mid-range and more back to the basket, but he can get out in transition as well. I don't know if you want to consider him a lob threat when it comes down to it, but for what it's worth, Deandre Ayton averages, for his career, he averages 16 points per game. He averages about 11 rebounds per game for his career, right at a block, right at a steal per game as well for his career. Again, the Bulls did not address the center position in the draft like many Bulls fans had hoped for. If they can find a deal to move on from Nikola Vucevic, a one-year prove-it deal for Deandre Ayton, would that be something that would entice Chicago Bulls fans? I think he would fit in with the style. Then there's questions about the injury, right? Since 2022-23 season, he's played less games every year that's followed since then. And that brings about another huge question there as well. How much money would he also get? Because he was bought out, is he looking for another big payday? Or is he more willing in this first year to take a smaller deal? Now, I want to be clear here. Deandre Ayton is more than likely headed to the Los Angeles Lakers. He shares an agent with Luka Doncic. That is probably the most likely scenario here for him, is that he's going to go to the Los Angeles Lakers. They're going to get a cost-controlled a center to take a one-year deal. They probably can sell him on, hey, LeBron only has 1 year left here. We'll move some things around if they strike out on going after other targets. But I do think it is worth a conversation there. Because he was unexpected, you would have had to trade for him and his $30 million contract, and that's where I was against Ayton. And not to say that I'm all in on Ayton. I think Ayton brings a lot of questions as well, but I do think there are certain things in stylistically that he could bring here to the Chicago Bulls if he were to buy in. Now, the Bulls may not be in a position to where they want to take that chance on Deandre Ayton. That's perfectly fine. Day'Ron Sharpe is there, who I do think, while smaller, brings a lot of the defense that we could need there at that position. And we'll see what happens with that if that ends up going down. But now with Deandre Ayton out there as an unrestricted free agent, it could be worth a look at for the Chicago Bulls. When you look at Ayton's number and break down his analytics more as well, which I wanted to do before bringing this episode here, there's only been 2 seasons in Deandre Ayton's career where the team averaged a negative point differential when he was on the court. That's last season, where it was negative 6.4, which with Portland and the way he was phased out, maybe you can make an excuse there. And then the last year in Phoenix, his last year there in Phoenix also for that season, negative 4.9. Other than that, every season of Deandre Ayton's career, the team has been better when he was on the court than when he was off the court, which I do think that you look at something there. You look at points per 100 possessions as well. He's only had 2 years of his career where the team scored less points per 100 possessions when he was on the court. Defensively also, he's had more positive defensive seasons than even I expected. When you look at DeAndre's career so far, he's only had 2 years where he's had a negative impact on the defensive side of the ball where teams were scoring more when he was on the court than when he was off of it. But even then, in those seasons, the team still outscored because of what he was able to do on offense, which is a good thing there. Now, there's some questions about his rebounding and his desire to be a really good rebounder, and that's a fair question there as well that the Bulls would have to look at. But with having solid rebounding all up and down the team, maybe they look at that as being something that they'd be willing to. The free throw rate, that's a big concern for him too. You can't overlook that. But for the most part, he's a center that doesn't turn the ball over. He's a center that has a game kind of similar to what centers on our roster already have, but at being 26 years old, a legit 7-footer, 250 pounds, and being somebody that, has been on winning teams before as well. So I would take an interesting look at Deandre Ayton. I would call his agent to see if the interest is there, to see what the money looks like. In no way am I saying that the Bulls should just break the bank or sign him by any means necessary, but it would be something that I would take a flyer on. I do think if you were able to get Deandre Ayton in here as well, with having Collins, having Smith still here, it could open you up to take back a little bit less on the Nikola Vucevic trade overall, and maybe look at that. Now, this would be a stylistic change with Nikola Vucevic still averaging more points and things like that, but there's that when it comes down to it. But like I said, more than likely, he's probably going to be a Laker, and that's just what it comes down to. He's probably going to be a Laker, and that's going to be the thing that comes down to it. But I do think that it'd be something that I would sniff around if I was the Chicago Bulls, to just see if there's any interest in that at all. If there is, and you can sell Deandre Ayton on coming to a team that plays a style that's more suited to his game, that he would immediately come in and have an opportunity to revitalize his career as well. And then the Bulls do have tons of cap space the following summer, in the summer of 2026, and at that point they could look to do something with him there. They also could structure the deal as a 2+1, which would maintain early bird rights on him, and then allow some more flexibility for the Chicago Bulls. So there's a couple of things that the Bulls could do here to make this beneficial for Ayton and for themselves, while still maintaining an ability to pivot off of it if he comes here for 1 year and it just does not work. I'd be interested to take a flyer on Deandre Ayton. Again, I'm not breaking down the bank. I'm not knocking down a wall to make sure he comes to Chicago, but I would be calling to see if it's some interest, some mutual interest in him potentially coming here and revitalizing his career for 1 year. Now, the question is, would even a year in Chicago really revitalize your career with how the Bulls are looked at around the league? Again, I'm a Bulls fan, but I'm not blind to the fact that there is some questions around that as well. So, there's some things that I would think about on that. But I think now with him being an unrestricted free agent after that buyout, it opens up a room for a lot of flexibility that if I was Deandre Ayton, if I was the Chicago Bulls, if I was Arturas Karnisovas, I'm at least getting on the phone to see if there's an option there for Deandre Ayton. And if it's too much money, if the Lakers are already offering him or in his ear, it is what it is then. No harm, no foul. But I would at least be on the phone. But more importantly, I want to hear from you guys. When you see that Deandre Ayton is now unrestricted free agent on the market, would you be willing to take a flyer on Deandre Ayton and bring him here to Chicago? Let me know what you guys think on that down below. Make sure you're following us at Bulls Central Pod. You send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. BullsCentralPod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that's thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.